This is TWiT.
I don't know if I've had this dream for years where, you have this PC that would last the entire weekend when you're traveling around without having to plug it in, but without the sacrifice of power and speed. Kind of like my desktop replacement dream of having this machine to be able to travel around with that. Well, isn't that the promise of what the APCs or Always-Connected PCs were? Well, let's take a look back in history a little bit. At Windows Hardware Engineering Conference, or WinHEC of 2016, Microsoft got on main stage and they promised the full-blown version of Windows supporting Win32 applications to run on Qualcomm chips in the near future. A year later, hardware vendors delivered some pretty compelling devices, such as the new Asus Nova. But there was a problem. They might have a battery of 30 days and a standby of 22 hours of active use, but that was at the expense of the device's power. Efficiency is kind of the combination of power and battery use combined, not just good battery. So let's think about it to date. Not only did they have a processing power issue, but they also had Windows had a perf and compat issue because it didn't run 64-bit apps. And they also had a marketing problem. They didn't market it right after the different vendors kind of started building the devices. Well, let's fast forward to now. Corrections of some of these things is you have Windows on Snap or Windows on Snapdragon processors, and it now offers 64-bit. Devs can recompile their apps and get 64-bit going. Not only that, VLC becomes one of the first ARM64 Windows apps. That's cool. I'm sure Brian will want to jump in on that. Of course, Intel's new display technology offers what they call low-power display technology. It can offer an additional 4 to 8 hours of battery life for your devices. And of course, the number one thing seems going to be helping out is Qualcomm's new processors. The Snapdragon 850 is a processor designed specifically for Windows devices to ensure 30% faster than the 8835 and even better battery life. So, okay, guys, I want to bring you in because it seems like we're there based off of what we're seeing from the technology standpoint. We all remember the first attempt of Surface RT back in the day. I had one. It wasn't bad. It was more of an entertainment device for me. I used it for videos and surfing the internet. But I think this might, based off the hardware specs and now the operating system, it means that we might be at the compatibility layer here. So, Curt, I want to bring it to you first. I think we finally have the beginning of the beginning, maybe for maybe the real product devices that allows for the enterprise players to maybe start bringing the devices they need for their organization and maybe even their sales organizations.
Yeah, I think so, because this is an incremental sort of thing. We can see some devices that have been used, for continual contact that have worked fine. For example, we see a lot of what I would call blue-collar applications. Everything from delivery people who have a device that really needs to work through a single shift to the trade crafts where they have devices with the same sort of thing. So we have those in business that have become the continually connected devices. We've seen it move into retail and white-collar spaces. Not only Microsoft, but companies like SAP with their software, they depend with a lot of their applications on the sales floor employees having a device that's always connected so that they can get instant analysis on customers, whether it's for previous buying preference or credit arrangements. So I think what we're seeing is incremental steps. And as you correctly point out, some of the big steps that we're still looking for are things like battery and the ability to update without having to reboot. To me, that's one of the things that where we really see some incompatibilities, because what we have is the desire for continual deployment, continually on devices, butting head up against the agile and DevOps disciplines, where in some cases we might have 20, 40, up to 100 different code drops in a single day, some of which are going to require application or device reboots to install the versions. So it's going to be interesting, I think, in the DevOps world, where we've been taught to treat everything as software, to see how some of this hardware is going to react to that kind of continuous deployment model.
Right. Yeah, I think, Chee, I want to throw it over to you, because I think you're sitting in front of an ARM device there, and it lets you kind of do audio, video content, lets you monitor things. What if that device was more portable? What if you could use the tools that you normally use on your PC, take them with you? Now you can get 30 days of battery life. Now you can make sure you're monitoring your labs at all the time. And you're using even the tools that you need to help fix and to monitor them as well. Does that make it more compelling for you now that you have to worry less about carrying that charger with you or where you're going to go when you need to use it? Plus, you got LTE access at all times. You have to worry about finding a Wi-Fi connection. Is this good? Think you can help the industry some more, or you think it's just you already have it with mobile devices?
Well, I've had it. I carry an iPad mini around with an LTE modem and 128 gig of storage so that I can store the kitchen sink on it. And I've got all kinds of apps, and I jump through lots and lots of hoops so I can manage things remotely without having to lug around a full laptop. Now, having said that, the industry there's a really interesting little sub-current that's going on. And I first really started noticing it as I started fussing around with the Amazon Echo skills. So like one of the skills that I just started using is called Monocle. And realistically, what it really is a portal. So what happens is the portal receives the video stream, in this case RTSP, then it converts it to, I wouldn't say proprietary, but a more difficult way of handling video to get it up onto the Amazon show. We started out, there's a huge push. In fact, I was part of that wave trying to push virtual desktops. Didn't work. The industry didn't want it. The market didn't want it. Didn't quite work. What we are now starting to see is kind of this blending, a hybrid. So I think it's getting to be the time where we need less and less processor, because we're going to have an intermediary handling some of the reworking, handling some of the big load, and then providing that link into whatever, an ARM, so forth. Now, the interesting thing is, one of the technologies that Qualcomm has had for the last decade and a half now is a technology that Curt and I reviewed for InfoWorld magazine, and it's called digital fountains. So James Cameron actually used it during the filming of Avatar. What it allows you to do is take a lot of data that's streaming, channelize it, and then if the data connection is reliable, purposely drop out some of those channels and mathematically reproduce it at the far end without having to transmit it. Kind of like, RAID 5, RAID 6 type of thing. Qualcomm owns that and has been threatening to stick it into their chips. So if we're having to stream, reasonably large amounts of data from a middle broker, I could see Qualcomm starting to integrate that more and more into the Snapdragon series so that we can have a little bit of both. So I think we're going to start seeing ubiquitous computing always on PCs. I just think it's going to be wrapped up with some kind of fancy schmancy name, but we've had it. It just took a little more effort. Now we're going to start getting it in consumer devices that are much, much easier to use, like my Amazon Echo Show.